Hello, everyone, and welcome to a live stream at the 5th Annual HVAC Training Symposium. My name is Ben Reed. I am with measureQuick, as you can see by my hat. And with me today is a fine gentleman who has teleported himself here to the symposium down in Florida from Ohio. And his name is Jim.
Hey, how you doing, Ben?
Good, man. Good to see you here, even if you're not here in the flesh.
Yeah, you aren't kidding. So,
yeah, but we're here to talk about something very important, which it is a solution for our labor endemic, and maybe a term, a method in which you haven't heard this talked about before, because a lot of people use the term either crisis, as in skilled labor crisis, or something related to that, because it's a fairly familiar term. But one of the problems with calling it a crisis is that a crisis is supposed to be temporary, and in the crisis you are expected to see everybody banding together to come up with a solution, and then you get beyond the crisis. We are not in a crisis because this has been going on for over a decade. We're in an endemic because we have learned to just live with it. We have not solved our problem of trying to get more skilled labor into this trade, into HVAC, into residential HVAC. It has gotten worse, and we have developed coping mechanisms. That's an endemic. So that's a piece of information that has really been at measureQuick. We've been thinking about it a lot, and Jim has come up with an idea on how to tackle this endemic. So, Jim, can you go into detail?
Yeah, I think it's been. I mean, we've been. I was a high school teacher for 12 years, and it's very interesting when you look at how we've tried to solve this over and over with traditional methods. I mean, every time, like if you go all the way back to Obama era funding, and now we're in Inflation Reduction Act funding, you see all these fly-by-night schools pop up. You see them hire, people, make them into instructors. They bust them in from everywhere they can get them and put them in classrooms. And these people end up like trained by people in the field, trained with the same methods that are this like long, I don't even want to call it an apprenticeship, because it's not an apprentice. It's just a long time in the industry. Like, the way that you learn this industry is you spend time in it, and you just learn by being there every day, by coming to work every day. There's not a lot of formalized training, and the people, when they come in, they learn fundamentals of the refrigeration cycle. They learn maybe how to braze on a piece of copper on a vise, or they learn these skills, but they're just such a small set of the skills that they need to be successful. Because when you look at this industry, it takes, I would say, a solid 5 years before you even start to feel like you know what you're doing. And then it's probably another 10 years before you actually do know what you're doing. And that's only at the level that you've been exposed to. There's so many people at Symposium that have way more than 10 years of experience, but they have like the same year 10 years over. They just keep doing the same things they're doing over and over and over again. And that's what makes this symposium so cool, is because you get around people, you get exposed to some new ideas, some new things, and just new ways of doing things. So we were backing up about oh gosh, it's probably been about 6 months ago, and we're just looking at what we're doing at measureQuick, and Chad Simpson, one of our local contractors, he started hiring people from Xerox, people from right outside of the industry that had like good communication skills. They knew how to come to work every day, dressed in a nice pair of pants and a nice shirt. They had good customer service skills. They could talk to people. They had everything but HVAC experience, right? They were polished. They were professional, but when it came to HVAC, they had zero experience in the HVAC industry. And so he and Ben Chenard were like, well, let's train him on measureQuick. And so they have a lab in Canton, Ohio. And I actually went in with them early on and helped them design the lab to specifically teach measureQuick. And in 8 to 10 weeks, leveraging technology, they were actually able to put these guys out into the field. And they weren't only doing well, they were actually an asset versus a liability. I mean, most people that you have for the first year are just a liability. In other words, you're hiring them because you need them, you're training them, you're investing in them, but they just cost you money. They're not as much help as you pay them. But these guys were bringing in very, very high-end jobs and sales, because all of a sudden, using technology, they were able to identify the systems that were good candidates for replacement, and then bring in the people that they needed to help get the sale closed. So it was, these jobs sort of started out as tune-ups. They're sending them out there to do a tune-up on equipment, but it ended up they're actually, at the end of the day, the customer actually said, you know what, I think I actually want a new piece of equipment. And that led us to two new roles in the industry. One's called the test, and one's called the ARC. And what's interesting when you looked at what Chad and Ben did, they didn't send these guys to the problem calls. In other words, these weren't service calls; these were tune-up calls. And I think it's so critical that we focus on that for just a minute, because what these guys were in a sense doing was to give the customer an opportunity to make a decision before a decision had to be made. In other words, Mrs. Jones, your system's 20 years old. I can surely keep it running for a little while longer, but eventually you're going to have to change it. Why don't we get somebody out here? Maybe we can do the heat loss calculation. Maybe we can evaluate your duct system. Maybe we can do some preliminary work, so that when you're actually ready to change the system out, we have everything already all mapped out, right? And if you're going to use somebody else to do the job, eventually they'll need the same information. But let's make a decision now, while we're not under duress, while your equipment's still running, before we actually get under duress, and then we're end up with a like-for-like replacement. Because if we make the wrong decision, you're stuck with that piece of equipment for 15 to 20 years, right? Unless you want to change it early. And that whole mindset of doing that presentation, and then obviously in a lot of these cases, once the consumer gets so far down there, they're like, you know what, I got to change it anyway. Let's just go ahead and do it. They ended up getting that sale. So that test, that a technical efficiency specialist, really becomes an advocate for the consumer to help them, try and prepare for the inevitable. They have the skill set to, deploy measureQuick, to take photos of things they need to take photos of, to use things like TrueFlow Grid to measure airflow and do a duct system analysis, see if the duct system's going to need work, to gather information about the consumer so we can look if there's, financing available and Inflation Reduction Act. And these people don't need to know all this stuff. What they need to know is where to put the probes, how to run measureQuick, how to do the duct system analysis, what to take photos of, and then using measureQuick, we just get it right back to the right people, right? And that's the whole concept of the test.
And I want to kind of break it down a little bit related to the work that the test is doing. They're very simply, in my mind, it's the design. The design isn't really getting done.
The test may be doing the design, or they may be more, I think, gathering the data that the designer actually needs to do the design. So think of it as, getting a picture of the existing equipment model and serial number tags, getting pictures of the existing duct system, looking at counting up the number of registers and supplies and returns and things like that. It's this is where I'm going back. They don't have to take a whole design course, but they may walk through the house with a product like Conduit, where they have a LiDAR sensor and they're doing a full measurement of the entire house in 10 minutes, where they're walking through and they're getting a floor plan of the entire house, so they can do a block load or a room by room load. They're getting up in the attic and measuring insulation, determine if, because a lot of times we need to improve envelope if we're going to go to a full electrification, we need to do envelope improvements. So they're, again, think of them as the person that is that is getting the information so that we can actually do that design element and actually, but also has the skills to actually tune up the system to get it operating optimally until it's ready to be replaced. So like, cleaning the coils, cleaning the filter. But I mean, if we got into something like pulling and cleaning a blower, that would get a service technician out, right? I mean, they're not gonna unwire things. They're more skilled than a homeowner, like an astute homeowner that would maybe maintain their own system, but less skilled than a service technician.
Yeah. And they really kind of, it's still doing the work that isn't being done because a lot of technicians are not incentivized to spend that time or to collect that information. And the business structure of most HVAC businesses require a plethora of other things that need to get done on every installation or service call, that all of those meticulous steps to be able to collect that information it ends up being such a divergence from their diagnostics and fixing work, that I think that's why there's that clash between they're not collecting really good data because they don't have the technology, they don't have the training, and then they don't have the incentives to do so.
Well, and nobody's collecting it. I mean, what literally happens a lot of times is that furnace or air conditioner runs till it's dead. The salesman comes out and he goes, "Well, you have a 2-ton. How's it doing for you?" They're like, "Well, it either doesn't cool enough or it cools or it's fine." So you either get a like for like, or maybe you get an upsized piece of equipment in a lot of cases, right? Or Mrs. Jones, this is all that's available. So we're going to, we don't have a 2.5 ton, so we're going to put a 3-ton in, right? Because we don't have that piece of equipment. So again, it's like we have this opportunity while somebody's out there doing this tune-up to spend another hour or two actually providing them with a service that's going to help them to make that electrification decision if they want to go electrification or they want to go dual fuel or whatever they want to do. But it's going to enable this to happen, right? Where right now we don't have any vehicle that enables people to actually do this. And we're watching. I don't know if you saw that the post on LinkedIn about people in New York that put on like 4 or 5 heat pumps into their home, and they had a $600 or $800 electric bill, and it was because they did the electrification before they did the envelope work. And they're saying if we had done the envelope work first, then we could have sized the heat pump appropriately. And sometimes it's just like taking an attic from R19 to R42 or something. It doesn't have to be crazy amounts of work sometimes to get a house more prepared for a heat pump. But it does require somebody to actually do an analysis, because heat pumps, they're as efficient as a gas furnace, let's say down to maybe in the 30-degree range. Once they get below 30 degrees, we want to give it every advantage that we can, because the COP starts to fall off to the point where now gas can become more cost effective. And it's what's interesting with, if you're a consumer, is if you probably averaged out your electric bills over the course of the whole year, even though you got this one chunk of an $800 or $600 bill, you're freaking out. It would probably average out, pretty reasonable over the course of the year. But if you want to have an upset customer, don't do the envelope first and let them get that bill, because that's what's going to happen. It's not about cash, it's about cash flow, and nobody wants to have that giant bill come in.
And a lot of the approach of the traditional industry, when like the order of operations for solving it, is usually just looking at the system instead of thinking about the house as a system. And so without taking a different tactic where you are solving the problem with data, you're letting the data tell you what the answer is, but you need to have that, all of the correct pieces of data to be able to inform that decision. But the decision almost could end up being like an automated, almost more empirical output, because if you have the correct pieces of data that are collected from the right locations using the right pieces of technology, then that's what really enables the TES paradigm. Is that it's taking somebody who is unskilled and being able to allow them to leverage data to solve that communications gap.
I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, because we got into Ty Brenneman is super passionate about the fact that we have a skilled labor shortage, and because I talk all the time, we have a labor shortage, and he's 100% right. We are missing skilled labor in industry. We need skilled labor, but the thing is that what if we could use unskilled labor and technology, right? I mean, I don't have to, think about the person that's at McDonald's running the cash register. The cash register is a full point of sale system. It runs the orders back to the kitchen. It actually counts everything that's in the drawer. It's an accounting system. It does a ton of stuff. But that person running the register, they're not an accountant. They're not a line chef. They're not running the orders back. They're literally just leveraging a piece of technology to do all that work for them. Right. Yep. We're taking a very complex system and we're putting a person with lower skills behind it that's got maybe good customer service skills, good customer forward-facing appearance, but then leveraging technology. So the answer becomes, like, we have spent the last 20 years saying we need more skilled labor. Well, what we actually need is technology that we can use unskilled labor and get the same results.
But I was going to say that probably is a little bit like, for Ty, it would be jarring for a lot of people who have spent their career priding themselves. Like everybody who's probably watching this, or everybody who's at this at the symposium, they have put in an order of magnitude more effort than a lot of people do to try to become that like really super skilled labor. And so to think that they might be working alongside somebody that doesn't know those HVAC skills could probably be a little bit jarring.
Well, it would be if we were trying to displace those workers, and we're not. We're, if I said we're going to use measureQuick to replace a service person, get a person in to do service work or a person in to do installation work, I'd say, yeah, no, you're absolutely crazy. You can't do that. You need more formalized education. You need a lot more tools. You need a lot more stuff to displace the current workforce, right? But there's two things that aren't getting done in our industry. One is we're not pre-screening homes and duct systems and preparing people for electrification. We're just not doing the sizing. We're not doing all that legwork. It does not take somebody with a high level of skills to aggregate data, to bring data together into a system that we can now give to a person with skills to actually do the job. What I'm talking about is like better leveraging our skilled people. So instead of sending out one person in your company that can do a heat loss calculation, have them spending an hour at every home and an hour of driving and be able to do a handful of them a day, to all of a sudden being able to do 5 to 10 times the amount of those, because they have all that information they need at their fingertips, because now we have people in the field that can go out and pull in that data for them. And on the other side, we haven't talked about the ARC a little bit. Maybe we should transition over to the ARC. But the Advanced Residential Commissioning Specialist, I think, is a very interesting role, and that almost came from, in some respects, going out to California and looking at energy auditors in California and what they were doing in California. And the energy auditor was like, honestly, never supposed to, touch the refrigerant charge on a system, but we all know that they were topping off charges, getting subcooling in the right range, readjusting airflow, because this is work, again, that wasn't getting done, commissioning work that wasn't getting done by the installation technician, right? So an install technician, they have the skills most of the time to do the mechanicals of the installation, connect the thermostat, connect the piping, maybe do the evacuation. They can set up the duct work and run the supply register and all that stuff. But there's this gray area where between the skill set that you have of an installation technician and a service person, where they may or may not know how to properly charge a system. They may or may not have their CFC certification. They may or may not know how to adjust the airflow and get the system set up properly. And because of that, a majority of the systems in the field today are left uncommissioned, right? It's a task that's not being done. So when we say that we're going to use lower skilled labor or unskilled labor and enable them with technology to be able to do this, we're talking about a few $1,000s worth of tools, something that can be done out of a Prius, somebody that we teach how to read a manual so that can adjust the fan speeds appropriately to get the airflow right. Somebody that understands CFM per ton and what they need to set it at. And then somebody that understands, how to charge a system by superheater subcooling and measure static pressures and some basic things. So it's not this is not a high lift. We're not teaching them the braze. We're not teaching them to solder. We're not teaching them how to wire controls and how to be a controls technician. We're not teaching them how to do duct work and how to do the mastic and how to do everything else with installing the duct system. We're teaching them a subset of skills, which is simply how to make sure that system is performing to the design. So now we've designed it, because now we're using the ARC to gather the test to gather the information to actually get a proper design done. We're not under duress. The consumer is actually able to make a decision. We pick the right equipment. We make sure the duct system is adequate. We complete the installation. The installer comes out, they do what they want to do, get the installation done. That's normally, these people are like drilled into a 7-8 hour day. They're going to get that install done. But what they're not going to do is get that commissioning done. So now we're going to send out a person post-installation to actually set the airflow, to actually get the charge correct on the system, to actually performance test the system and make sure that it's getting the heat or cooling to the space, that we're not entraining air from the registers, to take, again, maybe another a visual punch list. So they're taking photos that are coming back to the office in real time so that a third party can look at those photos and make sure that installation is done and the test has got enough information to make sure that it's operating. Hopefully we get a 100% score on it. It's operating as designed, as engineered. The charge is right, the airflow is right, and now the system is going to last 20 years. And we're going to eliminate the callbacks. We're going to eliminate the social media fallout. We're going to eliminate the dissatisfied customer. We're going to eliminate the high electrical bills. We're going to eliminate the emergency calls in the coldest day of the year. It's a huge benefit to everybody. And so that ARC rule, really, what do they require? They require a CST certification. They require somebody that's maybe a little more, I would say somebody that's got a little more introverted, that's like very detail oriented, that wants to, that's going to be a master of the manual, read the book. Make sure that they're very detail oriented, so they're going through a process that maybe is built out measureQuick, very methodical to get a very consistent outcome. Right? We got a process in place to make that outcome consistent. So it's these two roles are not displacing anybody. They're not replacing anybody. We're actually filling two voids. Which is the design side and the commissioning side that are not getting done. And then there's also this big boon to the company if they fill these two roles, is they don't have to equip every installer with a TrueFlow grid, with a probe kit, with all these tooling, and teach everybody at the company. Because now, I'm envisioning like one ARC could commission 2 to 3 systems a day at most. So you need 2 to 3 ARCs for every installation crew, right? And so the other interesting thing is we get is, well, how are you going to pay? How are you going to pay for this, right? And I think who's going to pay for this? Because we're not commissioning equipment today, and we're obviously. We're getting sales still. Why would we want to do this? What technicians are going to do this? So I think, part of it is services that we sell. Consumers there are consumers that are interested on electrification. There are consumers that are interested in tune-ups. Obviously, tune-ups are a loss leader for company. And, believe it or not, a lot of times people don't want to say it out loud, but I will, is that we go out, we don't go out for a tune-up to tune up the system. We go out for a tune-up because we want to identify a system that's ready for replacement, right? It is very, very rarely do we go out there and not with that mindset of let's look for the systems that are 15, 20 years old that are ideal candidates for replacement, and let's suggest the replacement to the consumer. and that's not without merit, because these equipment only lasts so long, and you're going to have to replace it. But now, again, we have a running piece of equipment. We're not under duress. We can actually gather the right information with the right tools and the right technology and the right people, and actually not only get a sale, but get a really good sale that may come with, the higher end equipment, the higher end technology, that may come with a insulation, that may come with other things, services that you provide on that test side. And then on the ARC side, I just had a contractor today say, well, who's going to pay for the commissioning and the resulting things that may need fixed after we put the system in? It's like, well, you are. You're already paying for it. You're paying for it in callbacks. You're paying for it in market reputation. You're paying for it in opportunity losses when your technicians are out there fixing something that you already installed versus installing something new. And your consumer, I mean, I think it was I don't remember who it was this morning. Maybe it was Dom from NCI said, being like buying a pizza and a big slice of it's missing, right? And it's like the consumer has no idea that you just stole a big chunk of their pizza, because they paid for performance, they paid for outcome, not for installation, right? The outcome they're looking for is comfort. The outcome they're looking for is safety. The outcome they're looking for is low utility bills. They're not looking just to have a piece of equipment installed. So part of this is a mindset, but also, I believe you could add additional money into your jobs and explain the service that you offer to your customer, that you're going to be sending out another party, a third party, that's going to actually do the startup on the equipment. And this startup could be done a day after, it could be done a month after, it could be 6 months after. If you have your installers make sure the equipment's safe, you put a combustion analyzer on it, you measure temp split, you do some basics, because obviously it's not always, let's say, ideal to start up the cooling in the wintertime, or ideal to start the heating in the summertime. Or you may like Ray O'Cook, Paul McHugh, he likes to schedule these commissioning their startups when it's their shoulder season, so they can focus on getting every install they can during the peak season, right? But it just comes down to deciding how you fit these two roles into your workforce. And these could be people, again, they could be inside your existing workforce. You could transition to these jobs, or people that you pull from the outside in. But what I'm telling you is that if you enable them with the right software, the right tools, that you do not have to have somebody with 5 to 10 years of HVAC experience to get very, very good outcome, because it's the first time in history we've actually been able to leverage some technologies that are going to enable these two jobs to be viable.
And I want to go back to because it's all very exciting. That the like LiDAR is super exciting. The fact that commissioning now is becoming a no-brainer because of how easy measureQuick makes it. But so many comments that I see, whether it's in Facebook groups, on YouTube, videos or streams, a lot of the questions come down to being like, well, it is all about the money, though. It is there are decisions that an HVAC business makes to be able to build a business model that allows them to be profitable, so that they can continue being in business. So I want to speak to that for a second, because one of the comments was like, but tools are expensive, and I see that all the time. A couple $1,000s is very expensive if let's say a technician is expected to buy it, and I think that's absolutely stupid if a business believes that the technician is the one that should be buying tools, because the cost to a business of not basically doing what I would call mitigating risk, it is so high. The risk that businesses are living with right now, without being able to make decisions based on empirical data, it is absolutely mind-boggling how much money is wasted because of callbacks, and because of inefficiencies, and because of rework.
the hard part has been is it's not often measured, right? We're in an industry where a lot of people don't have tools, or they're not actively measuring the impact of that on their business, and they don't think about things like opportunity losses. So let me just like bounce this off you for a minute, because I think this is important to understand. So the only people that bring revenue into the company are your service tech, your field technicians. Like they're in contact with the customer. They're actually bringing in revenue to the company. Everybody else at the company, when you like walk into that office, the office is overhead, the benefits are overhead, the vacations are overhead, the secretaries are overhead, the salespeople, maybe you could say are overhead or not, depends how successful they are. The parts person's overhead. There's probably 10 or 15 people in that office that are all overhead costs. There's the overhead of the trucks. There's the overhead of the uniforms. There's the overhead of any perks that you provide your employees. You add all that up, and that company has to make somewhere, let's say $400 to $1,000 a man hour to actually survive, because you've got a certain amount of revenue that you have to generate just to support the overhead costs.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have the opportunity losses. So again, if that person's out there fixing something that you already got paid to do, then again, that revenue is lost, because you're spending money at the same time you're not making money. So it's a double whammy. But if you don't measure that in your business, a lot of times you're thinking, well, Bob only makes, $30 an hour. So he was out there calling an hour. I only lost $30. You don't realize you lost $400. You don't realize if you would have had the tests out there that one time, that you would have paid that ARC one, 2 or 3 times over the amount of labor that you would have saved. And it's because we just don't have tools to measure. Now, we've had customers that have like Service Titan that we actually have them start to measure things. I had a contractor call me the other day. They have 100% callback rate on their new installations. So in the first year, 100% of the jobs that they had installed, they had gone back on for some reason or another. Anything from a disconnect that didn't have fuses in it to some kind of a little callback, new construction contractor, but 100% callback ratio. How much is that costing them? And eventually they get to the point where they can't do any more work because they're so busy servicing what they've sold that they don't have the bandwidth for more installations, and we can't hire more people because we don't have the skilled labor, so it just becomes this perpetuating cycle.
It's like the capacity, like you hire 10 techs, and because of all those inefficiencies, literally you're only getting the like 5, maybe 6 techs worth of value out of it, because they're living with all of that inefficiency. And this is kind of taking a bit of a tangent, but it's important because this I think is one of the keys to helping people go through that transition. Because it's not even about measureQuick. It's not about, connected tools. It is about that being able to price in that risk and opportunity loss. And yes, people aren't measuring it, but I think that, and we've talked about this before, I think that we should be maybe working with a couple of our partners to produce a couple calculators that make it very straightforward, just being like, okay, let's put in some numbers, what's your callback percentage, or maybe estimate what it is. And like look at these case studies about how this is how this company runs its business. And they had, let's say, maybe a 5% callback rate, and that could equate to $150,000 a year. If once you price it in, you can see how much money you're losing, but you need to make sure that you're accounting for those elements that a lot of HVAC business owners, like, let's face it, they don't go to business school for the most part. They're technicians. Most of them are technicians that become business owners, and there's those blind spots of being able to work with those factors that you need to have that other training, which there is no HVAC training aside from maybe some coaching programs that help you understand how to work with that side of the business.
Well, I think too, looking at Chad's business too. I mean, he's got, I can't remember how many, I don't know, I want to say it's 400 or 600 Google 5-star reviews, right? And we all know the companies are getting rolled up with a lot of the VC and PE money's coming in and rolling up companies. And what do you think a company's worth with 500 3-star reviews versus 500 5-star reviews? What's it worth for your company to have that kind of customer satisfaction that you get that kind of reviews where you show up, on the top page when somebody searches that you have this? What's that worth for the marketing of your company? What's it worth for the value of your company? I think there's just so much value there, and they've deployed this stuff, and they've actually made it part of their, obviously it's heavily ingrained in their business, but there's so much value there that I don't think they may not be realizing it this second. I mean, they're realizing it obviously in I think people call just because of the reviews, but I also think that they're building value, a lot of value in their company when it comes to the value of, when they go, if Chad ever sells, it's about efficiency of his workforce. How much more work can they get done by leveraging technology than their competitors can get done? How much more valuable are those employees? I remember there's an old adage that somebody said, well, what happens if I train my employees and they leave? And somebody else said, well, what happens if you don't train them and they stay? Right. And I think, when we look at deploying technologies like this, like training like this, and that's why I think the ARC and the has to have so much merit is at first with measureQuick, I'm like, oh, you should, every installer should have a set of probes. I do think every service guy have, but no, the installer should focus on the installation. We should only have a handful of people in the company that actually use this stuff for commissioning. We don't need to retrain. Like, I don't need to pull my installers out of the workforce for 2 to 3 days and train them over several months and tick them off because they don't want to do this commissioning piece because they've never done it before. And why should I have to do it now? I don't want to do that. What I want to do is bring people in that actually want to do this work, that actually we can equip the right tools, equip with the right stuff at a fraction of the cost now for the company, because now we're talking about equipping a small amount of the company with these tools, and instead of everybody, but we end up with the same outcome, right? At the end of the day, every system gets commissioned. At the end of the day, and what's interesting, we talk about, like if you put these on an installer's truck, they're going to use them once a day. You put them in the ARC, they're going to use them they're going to use them all day, right? They're going to use these tools all day. And same thing with the tests, they're going to use these tools all day. So now we're getting the best outcome for our investment. And we have somebody that is, specialized, that is going. And the other cool thing is that one of the things I talked to Chad about was, like, if you're going to send an ARC out, and he's putting the ARC rules into his company right now, I said, one of the things I would make sure they do is, if you find a problem on the job, then the ARC has to take a picture of highlight it, show it in the manual, show in the installation manual. Like, even if it's something like the flue pipe's not pitched properly, I want you take a picture and show it in the manual, because this is not about arguing who's right or wrong about the installation. The manuals are very clear. This is how it's got to go in. The manuals are very clear. What's that static pressure the system can operate under. It's like, it needs to be that people at the company all need to work together. The test needs to find the great jobs, the high-end heat pump installations, not put the consumer under pressure to make bad financial decisions, to have time to work on the financing and get these jobs, scheduled and done. And then the ARC needs to go out there and make sure that, that the system's installed properly and everybody gets what they want at the end of the day. But the beauty of this whole system is that it augments your existing installation service crews without displacing workers and without repurposing your existing workforce, right? And I think that's what's so unique about this opportunity. And it fills giant holes of work that's not getting currently completed.
And here's something for anybody who's like on the technician side, who is watching this, or is going to watch it kind of moving forward, is how much does uncertainty affect your work? How impactful is, like, the fact that you're missing certain pieces of information? Like, maybe you haven't thought about it, but you are living in ignorance on every single call that you're going to. If you're not collecting all of the data points to be able to kind of get to those conclusions that the tests and the arcs are, then you have uncertainty that the work that you're doing, like that you don't have all the information. There's something that the homeowner didn't tell you. There's something that the previous installer or service person didn't like add to the ticket or kind of write down, or it's just not obvious, or you don't have time to do it. And so all of the time you are living your lives, you're doing your work in this sea of uncertainty. And that's what ends up leading to callbacks, is because if you had certainty of knowing exactly what it is that you're supposed to be like, that's wrong with the system, like, and you knew exactly what needed to get done every single time, every problem is right there in front of you, then there's no more callbacks and everything's going to be a lot less stressful. Because like, if there are callbacks, then at that point you have if you had the data and then you made a decision not to act on it, well, then that's on you. But what if there was a world where you could still do the best work you want to do, but then there's bookends to your work so that you have the preliminary data that you need to do the best job and to not have uncertainty. And then you also have the information that after your job is done, you can now have a benchmark to understand how well you did and what type of improvement you need to make in the future. Because I know that all of you that are watching this, you want to get better. That's why you're here. And so like, battling uncertainty is kind of the key here. And that's what these two roles are supposed to do for you. That's what's in it for you.
Well, I think also, I mean, when I go back, I remember when I was probably the first 5 years that I was doing this, maybe the first 10, I don't know now, but I would go home at night and I'd be thinking about jobs in the middle of the night where I had seen something, maybe not understood it, and was just trying to figure out what did I miss? Like what else was happening on this job? Like, why was this doing this? And, you know, you'd see something and you wouldn't be earth shattering enough. You'd investigate a little further. It'd almost be like it'd be in the back of your head all the time. And I remember for the first 5 or 10 years, I could not sleep at night because I'd always be like reviewing service calls in my head, thinking about, did I do this? Did I do that? Did I put the screws back in? Did I miss something with the airflow? Did I miss something with the charge? Did I miss something with the installation? And, you know, a big part of it was we didn't have a process, but not like we have today with measureQuick. But the other thing is that I didn't take the time. Like I was fixing the root cause. I was fixing the symptom without doing a root cause analysis. You know, I get online all the time and I see these guys, you know, showing these nasty blower wheels or whatever. And like they're bragging about how they spent all this time to pressure wash and clean this blower wheel in the driveway. And all I can think about is, did you check the filter and make sure that dirt's not bypassing the filter? Did you offer a filter upgrade so that the system will stay clean longer? Did you look for duct leakage downstream to the point of filtration? Did you try and figure out what was causing this problem before you know, after you clean that blower wheel to make sure that this doesn't happen again, right? And you know, it's like, you know, the guy that goes out there and he finds the Schrader core's leaking. You know, every job he goes out, it's a Schrader core leaking because they don't do a leak check on the system. And they add a little refrigerant and they just think in the back of their head, I wonder how long this is going to last, you know. And a handful of those jobs every year they end up going back on because they fix the symptom, which was a little refrigerant, added refrigerant, but they didn't really take the time to do a leak check. And when you get in the habit of you know, checking airflow with TrueFlow, doing a duct system analysis, and you get in the habit of 9 probes, you know, a measureQuick every time, suction line, liquid line, high pressure, low pressure, return air, supply air static, return air and supply air temperature, outdoor air. When you deploy those 9 probes every time on every system, you will find problems that you're otherwise going to overlook because you're looking at the entire system instead of looking at the symptoms. And a system approach versus a symptom approach is so much better, and it arrives at so much better outcome. And it's just something that we've gotten in a mindset of being so busy and being so like we got to clear the board out. That's another pet peeve of mine. I always tell people, like, your first call should be your only call of the day, right? I mean, when I go in, I'm going through treatments right now for cancer treatments, and I go into my doctor. He literally, there's no time frame with him. No matter how much time I need to spend with him, he'll spend with me. It's well, I'm there. I'm his only patient. We need that same mentality when we're in the HVAC industry. It's not about just putting a capacitor and charging $600 and walking out the door. It's about looking at the entire system, looking at opportunities for electrification, opportunities for upgrading the system, upgrading the duct system, opportunities for the long term, making that sale versus the short term of just fixing the symptom. And I think if we can change that mindset, we can leverage a little technology. We can get the right people in to do the right jobs, and better leverage our skilled labor. And again, this is going back, if I can get data back with measureQuick to the skilled labor force that can help me walk through that, either the sizing, the solution, the problem, the commissioning. If I can, it's now about leveraging technology and then better leveraging our skilled labor. So when it comes back, I think we can actually make a transition from the whole mindset of saying we need more skilled labor to saying, no, we need to better leverage our skilled labor, and we need to bring people in and leverage technology to make that skilled labor more efficient. And I think if we change that mindset a little bit, we actually have an opportunity to end the endemic that we have in the industry and actually, and actually move forward. And it's not just measureQuick, by the way, because I think I want to call out, we learned a lot from Energy Conservatory with their guided workflow, sort of going through and doing a duct system analysis and the step-by-step their app went. We actually did the same thing with measureQuick, because we're like, we need to walk people through this process step by step. But it's gotten to the point now where, like I said, we can spend about 90% less time teaching the measureQuick process and literally walk somebody now step by step through what information to gather, what photos to take, what probes to use and where to deploy those probes. We can tell when the technician arrived at the job, when the system is stable, what the system score was, see the photos in real time. There's a lot of cool stuff coming it's going to make that workforce more efficient.
And I want to kind of maybe like wrap it up by, again, talking to who I believe the audience is, which is a lot of technicians that will be watching both on the measureQuick and the HVAC School channel, where I have seen a lot of kind of despairing either their comments or reactions to this type of I guess not altruistic, but bigger picture kind of approach. And I want to again kind of help connect the dots that a lot of this is just problems with the business model, where as Jim was saying, is that if you were to as a business owner, if they understand that this embracing this is not just it improves the industry, no, this is everything about the bottom line for them. It is risk reduction and opportunity enhancement. So like you find every opportunity, you reduce your risks by order of magnitude, because you now have certainty on all of the data that's coming through. And then like that literally just makes money come out of the business. Like that is an answer to a very profitable, scalable business.
I think also when you look at churn at a company, I will say this was definitely me. If I didn't feel that the company had my customer, like I don't care who you are. When you're going out in the field, those are your customers. You as a technician or you as an installer, you have the relationship with that customer. Yeah, you're a representative of the company, but if you feel like your company is screwing over your customer, then you have a very short life at that company, because you just can't live with yourself. And this is about, honestly, it's about doing what's right for the customer. It's about being able to sleep at night. It's about I think all of us, especially when you look at the HVAC group, the people that get together there, we have a sort of an unwritten code, or like the morals and the ethics are extremely high in the group, right? We're all looking to do what's best for the industry. We're all looking to do what's best for the environment. We're all looking to do what's best for the customer. And when PE money or outside money comes in and all they're fixated on is profit, it turns a lot of stomachs and it makes a lot of churn. So these roles also are very, very much pro customer, pro consumer, not putting people under that financial pressure. You guys all know how that feels. I mean, all of us at some point in our life had to make a financial decision that we didn't have the money to do something, but we didn't have a choice to do it. And we ended up in some kind of a bad financial situation. You don't ever want to put somebody in that situation. And you feel that pain personally, right? And you want to do what's best for the customer when it comes to doing that installation right. You feel like they paid for it. These two new roles assure that the customer's getting the right products, the customer's getting the right solutions, the customer's getting the equipment started up properly, and they're very much, I think, going to help eliminate some of the churn, some of the pressure that technicians feel to perform, because they're going to make the company profitable. And I think that's, to me, that's one of the most important elements of this, is that and Chad Simpson always talks about this. It's got to be a win for the customer first, a win for the technician, and then a win for the company. And I think when we look at it from that perspective, and we have that mindset of that win-win-win, and we're more outcome focused, I think that in deploying these two roles in the industry becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, Jim, we should probably wrap this up. But let me see if this shows up here. I'm trying to display. Yeah. So there's the article for anybody that's interested. You can just go to measureQuick, go to the news section. You can read more about kind of the vision behind this. But yeah, like a lot of this is trying to fix those problems. It's just another creative approach to kind of get us out of that rut where everybody is frustrated all the time. Everybody is complaining about how expensive tools are, and complaining about how, a lot of owners or businesses are not, they don't do the right thing. Like we're trying our best to try to attack all that head on. So if you're interested, show this to your people in your company who, might have influence over adopting this. And then let us know if you're interested, because we'd love to work with you to try to get this up and running. So,
all right.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Ben. Yep.
Everyone enjoy the rest of the symposium.